Live. Ooh, I get to introduce you, Marcus, to my favorite student. No, it's not you, sadly. My favorite student is Anne Serkey. She gets everything right. Now, there's a joke there if you think about it. Anne Serkey, she gets everything right. She never makes a mistake. She hasn't lost a mark in like 10 years. Some of you still haven't got the joke yet. I'm going to wait a little longer. I'm waiting for Ryder's face to get the look of cop. Anne Serkey. And okay, he's not going to get it. That's okay. There it is. I knew we would get it eventually. Okay, here we go. Good old Anne. She gets everything right. You'll see she's the name I put on all of my quizzes when we go through them together. Number one, right in scientific notation, it's going to be 1.23 times 10 to the... Now, if you're having trouble doing this by hand, don't be scared to put an arrow where the decimal is going to go. Put a decimal where it originally was. And Owen, don't be scared to count. The joke I make is go loopy. Don't be scared to draw some loops. Times 10 to the fifth, yes? I will give you a half mark for the 1.23, a half mark for the times 10 to the fifth. This is going to be 1 times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, negative 4. If you wrote 1.0 times 10 to the negative 4, I'll give you full credit because it did not say anything here about sig figs. Had it said to the correct number of sig figs, I would take a half mark off because you wouldn't be to the correct number of sig figs. But here they didn't say, so I'm good with it. It's going to be 2.5 times 10 to the negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is it negative 7? And 7.8062, I guess I got to write them all because they're significant, times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, positive 7. Half mark for the first half mark for the times 10 to the. Number 2 says perform the following operations on your calculator. Use the correct number of significant figures and express your answer in scientific notation. Okay, multiplying and dividing, I count sig figs. This is 2 sig figs, not 1. This is 2 sig figs. I'm going to go to 2 sig figs. I'm going to type on my calculator 5 scientific notation button 4. I don't need to type times or 10 or to the power of. Times 1.6 scientific notation button negative 3. This one was interesting. I got an answer in standard form. I got 80. First question, is that in scientific notation? No. So it's going to be 8 times 10 to the 1. Second question, have I gone to the correct number of sig figs? No, 8.0, that's why that has to be there, times 10 to the 1. You don't have to put the 1 there. You've learned in math when there's no exponent, it's understood. There's always an invisible 1 there, but usually for scientific notation, we do put it there. Half mark for the 8.0, half mark for the times 10 to the 1. Two sig figs, 2 sig figs. I'm going to go to 2 sig figs. 1.5, well, not 0.5, Mr. Dueck. 1.5 scientific notation button negative 5 divided by 3.5 scientific notation button 8. Mr. Dueck, what jazz? Don't you need to put the top in brackets and the bottom in brackets? Because it's a fraction and there's more than one thing on the top. There is more than one thing on the top if you don't use your scientific notation button right there. If you use your scientific notation button in place of the times 10 to the power of, I know on my calculator it knows that that's all one thing and it automatically assumes it's in brackets. You'll have to play around with your calculator to see how yours works, but that's the least amount of typing. And those of you that have the fraction button, of course, you use the fancy schmancy fraction button. I got 4.287. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go to 2 sig figs. That 2, is that 2 going to stay at 2 or become a 3? 4.23 times 10 to negative 14. 4.23 times 10 to the negative 14. Oh, why don't I do that? 4.3, yes? I knew there was a 3. I don't know why I kept the 2 there. Thank you. Ryder. And Serkey. Okay. I'm afraid to show him my other favorite student because my other favorite student is Ima. I use her name when I'm just checking this assignment off and not marking it. I'm waiting for it. I don't even think you got it, but well, okay. Sure you did. Alrighty. The tricky one that I gave, this is what happens when you're away. The tricky one that I gave you was number 3. I haven't done this specific one with you, but Shahab, I have given you the tools that you need. This is adding and subtracting. What was the rule for adding and subtracting? Not sig figs. I'm not going to go 2 sig figs, 2 sig figs. It was decimal places. The problem is, in scientific notation, I don't know how many decimal places this is. 2. No, no, no. That's written in scientific notation, but that's not how many decimal places over it went. I need to unscientific notation these. I need to write them in standard form, and that's what I'm going to do first. This is going to be 0.00075 plus 0.00013. 2 sig figs. No, 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 no. This is adding and subtracting. Totally different rule, Geo. It's decimal places. 5 decimal places. Sorry, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 6 decimal places. I'm going to go to 5 decimal places. I'm going to type this in. 0.00075 plus 0.00013. I get an answer in scientific notation, which doesn't help me. I'm going to have to write that in standard form. I get an answer that looks like this, 0.000763. Laura, how many decimal places am I going to go to? The smallest number I wrote. Unos, dos, tres, cuatro. That's the 5th decimal place. Is that 6 going to stay a 6 or become a 7? So final answer in standard form would be this. Did they want me to leave it in standard form? Say no. I have to write this in scientific notation. Final answer, 7.6 times 10 to the negative 4. That's a tricky question, but I would also argue I didn't do anything new. I was just clever. I don't know how to do this. Well, I'll turn it something I already know how to do. I know how to add decimals. Well, let's turn it into a decimal. So I need the 7.6 for a half mark and the times 10 to negative 4 for a half mark. Yeah. No, no. Half mark if you have the times 10 to negative 4, I guess, but also disappointed. Turn the page. Did the instructions here say write in scientific notation, Darian? I don't care then. Sometimes my calculator, in fact, I think the first one, my calculator gave me an answer in scientific notation, so I used it. We're multiplying 2 sig figs, 2 sig figs. I'm going to go to 2 sig figs, so it's going to be 0.15 times 0.0016. I got an answer. It gave me mine in scientific notation, 2.4 times 10 to negative 4. And I said, you know what? That's convenient because it's also the correct number of sig figs. Or you could go 0.00024. Some of your calculators might have displayed it that way. That number, it's right on the tipping point between various operating systems as to when they'll leave it in standard form and when they'll scientific notation it. I'd take either. These ones, though, are all or nothing. No half marks. We're multiplying and dividing. I count sig figs. That's 3 sig figs, not 1. That's 4 sig figs, not 1. I'm going to round to 3 sig figs. I'm going to type it into my calculator as 40 divided by 30. I get 1.3 repeating. That 3 right there is the 3rd sig fig. Is that 3 going to stay a 3 or become a 4? Final answer, 1.33. If you put the repeating sign, I'm marking it wrong. It's not repeating. C. Still multiplying and dividing, so still the number of sig figs rule. 3 sig figs, 2, not 1 sig fig. I'm going to go to 2 sig figs. I'm going to go 5.15, scientific notation, negative 5 divided by 6. Will the 0.0 make a difference on my calculator? I'm not going to type it then. Scientific notation, negative 7. And how many sig figs did I say I was going to go to here? 2. I guess this 5, is this 5 going to stay a 5 or become a 6? 86. Or 8.6 times 10 to the 1. Adding and subtracting. Now I'm not counting sig figs, I'm counting decimal places. 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places. I'm going to go to 2 decimal places. 5.06 plus 8.124. 2 decimal places. The second decimal place is that 8. Is that 8 going to stay an 8 or become a 9? As I like to say, 9! 9! Yeah? 9! 9! The jokes are only going to get worse. Much like a Star Wars sequel, just lower your expectations. Don't expect much at all. Y'all know there hasn't been a good Star Wars movie for 25 years, right? Okay. Longer than that, really. Adding and subtracting. 3 decimal places, 1 decimal place. I'm going to go to 1 decimal place. 615.824, take away 55.2. 1 decimal place. Is that 6 going to stay a 6 or become a 7? 560.6. All or nothing. Can you give yourself a score, please, out of 12 at the top of the page? If you need to lawyer with me, now is the time. Otherwise, let's do that.